Mrs. Mackenzie's Wish, written by Ravindra Bhalerao, published in the year 2010. I first met Ralph Mackenzie at an evening party many years ago. He was fair-complexioned with whiskers, an old-time veteran dressed impeccably in a navy blue suit, and he moved around aided by a walking stick. The gramophone had begun to play a lively tune. There was laughter and gossip amidst the tinkle of crockery, while the children found their own way of making themselves merry. Standing by her husband's side was Nancy Mackenzie, a charming old lady in a dress, her hair done up in a neat little bun, quick to smile, a bit eager to please anyone who came her way. When I announced I came from Nagpur, the aged couple instantly pricked up their ears. There was a spontaneous outburst of enthusiasm and a lively talk ensued. Mackenzie, I found, was an ex-railway man who had lived in the Ajni railway colony back in the 40s. Old memories, like a faded photograph, began coming to life, and the couple were eager to know what the colony was like today. Do you still have those brick red bungalows nestling among a jungle of trees? What has happened to St. Anthony's Church? And what about the Railway Institute? The questions kept coming, and I tried to answer them as best as I could. They had great recollections to share of their days in Ajni, of Rolf's work in the goods yard, and the colorful ball dances and shows held at the institute. It was a great life, Rolf pointed out, but sadly also an age that had passed into history, never to return again. The Mackenzies came from Mahou and lived in Ajni during the late 40s, later migrating to England as many other Anglo-Indians had done. Now they were on their heritage trip to their homeland after a space of nearly 3 decades, and they looked forward eagerly to a great time here, revisiting all the places they had known. It was to be a grand tour, but sadly, following their arrival in India, an urgent message from their son back in the UK had upset all arrangements, and their visit had to be cut short. How disappointing. The party drew to a close, and I prepared to leave. Mrs. Mackenzie was by my side again. She had fussed over me all along, and now she turned to me with a fond smile and a request. She drew out a sheet of paper from her purse, scribbled her address on it, and pressed it into my hand. Could I send her a picture of the Ajni Institute, telling her how it fared today? She would be leaving with her husband on the morrow, she said, reaching Bombay by train, and from thence catch a flight to London. I bid goodbye to the Mackenzies and returned feeling this was the only worthwhile party I had ever been to. Back in Nagpur, I found out the Railway Institute Nancy spoke about, and although I did not take pictures, I made a careful study of the place. Railway institutes are recreational clubs and were a favorite haunt of Anglo Indians in pre independence times. This one was as quiet as a mausoleum. I sat down to write a letter to the Mackenzies. My gaze swept across the dance hall in wonderment. I wrote. The tiles, dull red in color, cover every inch of the floor from wall to wall. High up above me is the somber ceiling, its dark wooden beams set in a V pattern. This place is full of memories. The letter was mailed and I waited for a reply. I had hoped Mrs. Mackenzie would like the rough sketch of the institute I had drawn for her. A month passed, then two, and I began to feel that Nancy would have far better things to do than treasure my sketch. Maybe they would return a few years later and see the place for themselves rather than ask someone to describe it for them, I thought. 3 months later came a letter from Wiltshire. I eagerly opened the packet. It was in Mr. Mackenzie's hand and sounded like a feeble voice coming from afar. Nancy Mackenzie had died after a brief illness shortly after their return to England, leaving Ralph completely shattered. My letter, together with this enclosed sketch of the Railway Institute, had given them both a good deal of pleasure, Ralph wrote. Nancy had even kept the sketch close to her bed during her final illness. I held up the tiny photograph of the aged couple which had arrived in the mail. I found Nancy smiling fondly at me. "Thank you, friend," she seemed to be saying. "You have fulfilled my last wish." Thank you for listening. Now, some of the words and their meaning. He was fair complexioned with whiskers. Fair complexion means have a white or light skin. An old-time veteran dressed impeccably in a navy blue suit. Impeccably means in accordance with the highest standards, faultlessly. Standing by her husband's side was Nancy Mackenzie, a charming old lady in a dress, her hair done up in a neat little bun. Get one's hair done up means to have one's hair styled in some way. When I announced I came from Nagpur, the aged couple instantly pricked up their ears. Instantly means at once. Prick up one's ears means become suddenly attentive. There was a spontaneous outburst of enthusiasm and a lively talk ensued. Spontaneous means happening or done in a natural, often sudden way, without any planning or without being forced. Ensued means followed. Do you still have those brick red bungalows nestling among a jungle of trees? Nestle means settle comfortably, situate in a sheltered position. The Mackenzies came from Mahou and lived in Ajni during late 40s, later migrating. Migrate means move from one place to another. The party drew to a close and I prepared to leave. Mrs. Mackenzie was by my side again. She had fussed over me all along and now she turned to me with a fond smile and request. Fuss over means to pay a lot of attention to someone or something in a nervous or excited way. She drew out a sheet of paper from her purse, scribbled her address. Scribble means to write something quickly and carelessly. Could I send her a picture of the Ajni Institute telling her how it fared today? Fare means get along, survive, or proceed. She said, reaching Bombay by train and from thence catch a flight to London. Thence means from that place. I bid goodbye to the Mackenzies and returned feeling this was the only worthwhile party I had ever been to. Worthwhile means useful, good enough for the money or time spent or the efforts made. Railway institutes are recreational clubs and were a favorite haunt of Anglo-Indians in pre-independence times. Haunt means a place often visited. This one was as quiet as a mausoleum. Mausoleum means a stately or impressive building housing a tomb. I sat down to write a letter to the Mackenzies. My gaze swept across the dance hall in wonderment. Gaze means a steady look. Sweep means to move quickly and powerfully. Wonderment means a state of awed admiration or respect. 3 months later came a letter from Wiltshire. I eagerly opened the packet. It was in Mr. Mackenzie's hand and sounded like a feeble voice coming from afar. Afar means at a distance. Thank you very much.